I like to start these things with a quote. So today what I have is from Albert Einstein. Creativity is seeing what others see and thinking what no one else ever thought. And I think Natasha is the right person to talk more about that. She's a director of sales and marketing at Marr Media, focusing on aligning with organizations that have shared values and pairing her team with the brands they are creatively inspired by. She also has a decade of experience in marketing and sales, including the exit of her full service agency. Natasha, how are you today?
Good, Zivko. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So I think you have a really interesting journey. So I would like to start with that. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey, how you started from the beginnings all the way to where we are today with Marr Media?
Yeah, absolutely. I like going way back. I think I knew I was going to be in marketing when I was in high school. I remember doing one of those, what are they called? Those career discovery tests that you do in high school. And they're like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I remember that marketing was, there's 3 different marketing positions and they were at like the top of my test. And so I always sort of knew that marketing was something that I was interested in, but I really started my career in sales. So I like to consider myself a salesperson who then specialized in marketing. So my career really started off, in actually insurance sales, which a lot of people are surprised about. But I did that for years. And then when I was in that job selling insurance and having a lot of success with it, I was doing really well for like being in, my late teens, early 20s is when I did that. But I remember sitting at work one day and thinking like, there's got to be more. Like, I feel like I have the potential for more. Not necessarily like more money. I was actually doing really well, like financially for someone that age, but it was like, I want to do something exciting and interesting and I want to travel and I want to do all these things. And so I just randomly started Googling, where can I transfer my university credits overseas? And I landed in Australia at the beginning of 2014. And I was a mature student, as they like to call you when you enter university at any age other than 18. So I was 21 years old. I showed up in Australia with 1 suitcase. I didn't know a single person there. And I just said to myself, I'm going to have an experience. I stayed there for 3 years. I finished my bachelor's degree in business with a major in marketing. And I had wonderful experiences of internships and evidently being recruited by the university into their marketing and communications department. And I met my now husband there, who's from New Zealand, and it was a whirlwind 3 years. But I'm so glad I had the opportunity. And then, yeah, when I came back to Canada, I landed in Kelowna, BC, which is not my hometown. I'm from just outside of Vancouver. And I really had to, what felt like start all over again, because when you've been living in a different country for 3 years, you just get so used to the way that things are. And I had a great, job there with the university in marketing and I loved it. And then I landed here in Kelowna. And at the time, it was really before Kelowna really took off. And there wasn't a whole lot happening when it comes to marketing here. So I looked for a job and I just couldn't find a job that I was really interested in. And I ended up starting my own agency in 2017. And I grew that agency for 6 years. I went from, social media focus to full service. I hired people that were a lot smarter than me. That was, we can talk more about like my biggest business advice. That would definitely be it. And I also had 2 kids. So I had my daughter in 2019 and my son in 2022. And I just got to the point of feeling like I don't really know how to grow this business anymore with a toddler and a newborn baby. And so I just started tapping into my network and I actually sold the agency, actually came to the agreement at the end of 2022 and then transitioned into the new agency in 2023. And I did that for 6 months. And then I found Marr Media. I found Tessa, the CEO, on LinkedIn, and here we are. So that's my long-winded response to how did I get here.
And I wanted the long version because it's interesting. It's not the usual path that people take, and it's very unusual, especially to start in insurance sales and from
Yeah.
there to switch to what you do right now with Marr Media, which is so focused
Yeah.
on creativity and the approaches that are. There's nothing. I don't think there's any similar. Is there any similarities between selling insurance and what you do right now with Marr
The
Media?
sales in general. I mean, obviously, Obviously at Marr, I'm, director of sales marketing, and my role is all about business development and basically how can we move the agency forward toward to meet our vision of sort of who we want to be. And that there's a lot of different things that come into that. There's the way that, we position ourselves as an agency, what our messaging is, who our audience is and how we want to speak to them, and what value do we want to be able to provide to them. And then, in addition to that, there's sales, obviously. But sales is, like I said, I think I was born to be in sales. Sales is something that a lot of people are scared by it. To me, it just comes naturally. I actually really enjoy the process of sales and, meeting new people and new brands that come into our pipeline and getting to understand them and learning about them. And then just being able to make a call, like, are we really the right fit here? Because often we're not, we might not be the right fit. And I really enjoy that process and coming to the point where I get to introduce this amazing new brand and client to our team. And I love it. So I think, I'm a salesperson who has been in marketing for about 10 years. That's sort of how I describe myself. But I'm a salesperson at heart. And so there is a lot of, doesn't really matter what you're selling, whether you're selling insurance or marketing services or cars, or it doesn't really matter. If you're a salesperson, the fundamentals carry themselves, across whatever industry that you're working in.
Got it. And it sounds like you do see there's a lot of similarities, and there's fundamentals that kind of transition. Doesn't matter in which sales position or which industry you're in. But I wanted to ask, did you experience a difference in sales in Australia and North America, Canada, and USA?
Well, that's a good question. So my position for the university was within the marketing department, but it was centralized into student recruitment. So it was very much a match of sales and marketing. As you can imagine, student recruitment has a lot to do with marketing and has a lot to do with sales, because we are trying to sell students and or their parents on attending the university. So the answer is no. There is no difference. To me, anyways, potentially other people have a different perspective. There are cultural norms. There are cultural nuances, to do with how people speak and, how direct you can be. In Australia, for instance, they are much more direct. So Canadians are, I like to say, they are polite but not friendly. So Canadians are really nice to your face, but they often don't really say how they truly feel. Which is interesting from a sales perspective, because, to give you an example, it's I'm not over here trying to sell people that don't have an interest in purchasing our services. So if I approach you and you're not interested, I'm absolutely fine with you just saying you're not interested. That's the kind of person I am. I'm a very direct person. So I appreciate that. Now in Australia, that's completely the norm. You just say how you feel, not in a rude way.
Yeah.
You just say how you feel. And that is that's considered to be the normal way to do business. In Canada, people skirt around things. They waste a lot of your time. They're not honest all the time. And so the fundamentals of sales are the same, but the cultural nuances and norms and sort of how you talk to people is definitely a little bit different.
Yes. And I feel like there is, in the example you gave with Australia, with a lot of clients from states, and not just the South, even from New York, it will be a very much a short conversation, and they might end the call with me saying okay, I like what I hear, so I'll just put you in touch with the right person, and then we can get the ball rolling. Whereas someone that is here from Canada, whether that be Ontario or BC, Ontario is more influenced than from the States. It's still a little bit of a tap dance until I get the real answer. And there's, like you said, there's no feelings are hurt if you say, look, it doesn't work for me. Maybe it's the price, maybe it's your philosophy. But there's a little bit of a tap dance of 2 to 3 weeks until I get an answer.
Yeah. And it's just Canadians aren't very honest. They're actually just not very honest, even when it comes to feedback and things like that. When we have this complete procedures within our agency built around how to solicit feedback from our clients, because it is incredible how much people want to hold on to and not tell you. But if you don't provide feedback, you're not giving anybody an opportunity to, first of all, understand that there's a problem. And second of all, the opportunity to address it and make it better, because it could just be a preference. Maybe it's just the way you like to be communicated with. But, Canadians are really funny about just being honest, and my husband's from New Zealand, and New Zealand is very much the same as Australia in that very direct, like they're straightforward, you get what you see. That's just the type of people they are. And he actually seriously struggles with this, living in Canada. He's like, Canadians, I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand why they're so concerned with being polite that they're not honest. And so that's something that's really interesting and has stood out to me as a professional, sales professional, and marketing, to be honest with you, because it obviously ties in very closely to marketing. Operating in different countries has been interesting. And now we have a large concentration of our clients are in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do find it generally like a little bit easier to work with American clients because they're just a little bit more forthcoming.
Yeah. And I've never thought about it that way. And you're right, because I've always looked at it the polite way. Like, it's just a polite way. And I know that someone, and I really read between the lines. If someone says we'll talk in 2 to 3 weeks, that is a no.
That's a no.
That's
That's a no.
that's a no. And I never looked at it from like, yeah, you're not being genuine and honest, just to say, look, it's not gonna work out for me. Not even 2, not even 5 weeks. It's just not gonna work out. And it's better if you say it. And even when things don't work out, I've seen the calls when I have with someone, hey, look, it's not working out. We tried. I feel like my service is not the right way of doing XYZ. Even that call is like 30 minutes later, we get to the, I really want to stop or pause. What are you doing today?
Yeah. And I even think about this again with like our own clients in terms of, say, like our results. So we're super transparent, upfront agency, which is not super common in our industry, actually. So, we're always saying to people like, look, this isn't working. Like not the whole thing usually, but this piece of it is not landing with the audience. And so like, we want to change it yesterday, and, or what, we did this and it was a total flop. Like, we're not going to do that again. But here's what we learned from it. And here's how we're going to change this moving forward. And I just think that honesty and transparency, and like, it's not about being blunt. It's not about being like, a lot of people call me direct, and I am direct for sure. I have that personality type, but it's not about doing it in a rude way. It's just like, hey, this is what's happening. Like, yes, no, maybe, we need to change this, whatever it is that you're talking about. I just value that so much. And I know that when we put it in the right way to clients, that directness and transparency, that is very well received. And, I just resonate with it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I want to be told straight when it comes to business, and I'm sure you do as well, because we're not here to waste time and money. So
yeah. And I feel like in that process, when I have that communication with clients, things happen a lot faster. And at the end of the day, we work for many years because there's no like, I don't know what he's doing right now, or is he being honest? Because we have had those calls. And even today, I had a situation where I told the client, look, I don't think this is going to work out because of your methods and your goals and your strategies. What I'm doing, it will just doesn't matter how long we try this. And they said, thank you so much. I'm going to part ways. I was like, exactly. This is the best to do, because I know it's not going to work out in 3 or 6 months. It's just, I can see it as a difference in philosophy. Now, when we talk about philosophy and how you approach communication, I wanted to look at your leadership philosophy, because you are in a position of leadership. You have a team and you're direct with clients, but you also probably have your way of communicating with your team. So I would like to learn a little bit more about what is your leadership philosophy, basically.
I think I probably pull in, different philosophies when I think of like how I lead, how I've led in the past and how I lead now. So the unique thing about my position of leadership now is that I don't technically have direct reports because the structure of our organization, but I do lead with my leadership team. So a little bit of a unique in terms of like the way that we're set up, but what leadership, what I have found to be so valuable in leadership, and what I try to do now, even though the operations team at Marr is not they're not my direct reports. They are obviously still looking to myself and the other two members of the leadership team for direction, guidance, support, etc. And, my kind of philosophy when it comes to this is like getting in the trenches. Like, I am someone who like leads from beside, so what is happening? Where is there a fire? Where can I step in? Where do you just need some extra support? Before we jump on this call, it's interesting. I actually just messaged one of our account managers and I said, look, I want to do a better job of supporting you in, she's onboarding 2 new clients this right now in the middle of a strategy and implementing execution for 2 new clients, which we're taking on big deals and they're not small clients. So it's a big undertaking. So right before this, I was, I know that she's had a lot on her plate. And a few things have fallen through the cracks, and these things happen, right? But I think it's our job as leaders to step in and get in the trenches, like with our team, and figure out, it's not about what you did or didn't do. It's about, okay, how can I support you better? Like, what else can I do to give you more resources, or literally just solve problems with you? Like, let's just get on a call, get on a huddle on Slack. Let's just solve problems together. What's not landing? Like, is it the process? Is it the client? Like, where can we help? Right? Is it a communication breakdown? So I just, first of all, I enjoy leading from within, because I think that at the end of the day, we all got into this in my industry. Like, we got into this industry for a reason. We like to like get on the ground and like be talking to clients and being creative and like coming up with solutions, and that's a big part of what we do, and so I just enjoy doing it. I'd rather get in and do the work with you and problem solve together than just pointing my finger at you and telling you like, this isn't going to work, you need to do it better next time. So making sure that we've provided all those, like I said, those resources and things like that. And another example, earlier today, I was on and I'm not always on client calls, obviously, because I don't head up operations, but I come in, we have quarterly strategic planning sessions, and I come in on client accounts where I might be able to add some value or some strategic direction. And I got on a call with one of our clients, our account manager and their team, and it was so much fun. I was like, I want to do more of this. Like, this is so fun. We were like creatively spitballing ideas for like their upcoming campaigns. And I kept putting my hand up. I'm like, oh, I've got a great idea about that. And I was like, this is why I started doing this. And I think when you become leadership and you end up sitting in these leadership roles, you get pulled away from that kind of stuff. Like, you don't have as much time for it anymore. And I think like sometimes we as leaders, we just like need to get in and just start and do the work, like do it with our team. And it uncovers a lot of things. It shows us where there might be fractures. It shows us where we think that we might be able to make improvements and where we might be able to support. And it lets our team members know that we're not above working on client work with you. We actually would prefer to do that than all this boring administrative stuff. So that's kind of my philosophy. I don't know if, hopefully that answered the question.
It did. And I feel like people should give it a shot. Like, what happened with me was I stepped away from account management because I was like, that's a lot of time and I need to make the service a little bit better, and I need to work on the product and product development and get it to the next level, and then we can implement it and then kind of see where things go. And for that period of time, like you said, I was getting like out of touch with what I really need to focus in product development. I was developing the service, I was in tweaking messages and trying new things, but without the feedback loop. I was getting it from my account manager, but that is very different. So now I do the account, the client calls and account management, and it definitely sped that process dramatically faster. And I do enjoy it, and I have a similar philosophy in working next to your team to see that, like you mentioned, like no one is above anybody. I'm more than happy to do this as opposed to the boring administrative work. Now, something that I think a lot of people will have experienced, which is how do you break it down to a top performer that they dropped the ball a few times on the same subject. Because it's easy when something doesn't work and you're like, I'm really sorry this is not working out. But you're a top performer and you start seeing something is not working. How do you break it down to them that they're dropping the ball on the same thing over and over again?
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess my first like gut instinct would be to pull things apart and understand. We run on EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and so first of all, problems come into our purview every week. We pull them into our weekly issues list. That's a part of the way that we run the organization. In our L10, which are our leadership meetings, every week we come together and we go through the same agenda and like we work through issues as a leadership team. So something like that would typically get pulled into our weekly issues list, right?
Okay.
And the first thing that we ask ourselves, what's the real issue? What is the actual issue? The symptom might be that, so-and-so dropped the ball on this and this a number of times, but what's the actual issue? Like, what's really causing it to happen? Have we given them too many client accounts? Have we not given them the tools that they need to get the job done?
Right.
Are we not, have we not trained them properly? Like what, because you really have to get to the cause of the problem as opposed to the symptom of what you're seeing is that they dropped the ball, but that's not the problem, right? It's not
Right.
the actual issue. So I guess, that's how we normally work through things as a leadership team. And none of that is departmental. So our leadership, so even though I'm not in operations, I solve all the operations problems with Tessa, who's the CEO and managing director, who manages operations. And our director of finance and administration solves all the problems with us. So there's 3 of us on the leadership team, and everything that comes up gets brought, if it goes past the department, then it comes to leadership. And that's where we all step in and we just start digging, basically. And that's where you really have to take ownership and accountability as a leadership team and understanding, what kind of organization have we set up here? What kind of team are we running? What kind of leaders do we want to be? Ultimately, everything is our fault. That's how we feel anyways. In the rare instance of which someone has made a mistake once or twice or 3 times, and we feel like we've done everything we can and we've provided them all the support and tools and all of the things, then ultimately they just might not be aligned with our values as an organization. So we hire and we fire on values. And so we evaluate on values. So our performance reviews are 100% based on our values. And that makes it very clear when somebody is just not a fit for the organization because they don't subscribe to our values in the way that we want them to. So they're a big part of what we do, and shifting our focus that way as a leadership team has substantially improved the performance of our team and our organization and given us more opportunity to scale as an organization. And so I'm a firm believer in hiring and firing and evaluating by values since I've been a part of this organization and seen it firsthand. So evidently, like I said, if you do the digging and you sort of feel like you've alleviated all the issues, then maybe it's a value misalignment.
Right. And I'm fairly familiar with the US system. And I think if I recall correctly, there is like a 90 days, and 90% of people within 90 days realign and everything goes back to where it needs to be. And it's really a problem solved. And that 10%, you either have the right person in the wrong seat or wrong seat for the right person. And then if that doesn't work out, then it's really not aligning with core values. And I think I started doing that, and when I went through that exercise of finding how do you find core values? First, look at your best top performers and pull out what are their best traits that you want to see across if you can clone that person. And once I started doing that, I was like, this is fantastic. This is so easy. Now I know exactly what I would like to see in everyone. And those reviews, when are done based on core values, I agree, like they are a lot more clear and everybody's on the same page. You don't, in the past, I did, like, I'm pretty sure a lot of organizations have that feeling where you're struggling to build a culture. Like, what did they do wrong in this interview process? It was
Yeah.
like, they're
Yes.
so good, but something kind of doesn't work out if you don't do
Yeah.
the evaluation based on core values.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been in this situation, like we did a reorganization about a year ago is when it started. And we basically just changed the structure of our organization, and we looked at integrating all of our full-time team members onto EOS. So leadership was integrated into EOS before that. And then, like I said, a year ago, we sort of opened that up to all of our full-time team members being a part of EOS. And, that was a very uncomfortable stage to go through. You got to ask yourself the hard questions as an organization. As you said before, is like, is this the right person in the right seat? And I can tell you that we had, probably about four people that were not a good fit for our values, where we were going. They just were not the right person for the job. And we had to make a lot of hard calls in the last year. And at the time, it felt really difficult and just, uncomfortable. And there were multiple points that we were just shaking our heads, looking at each other and being like, do we make the right decision here? Like,
Yeah.
this feels really hard. I don't know if we're moving in the right direction at all, actually. And then it was like this, I'm not a religious person, but it's like this come to Jesus moment in February. And we all kind of came back after the holidays and kind of get got to get back into the swing of things in January. That was kind of behind us. And we're, coming into February with like, okay, fresh legs, and we had this, new marketing and sales plan that I had spent 4 months, you and I met at that time. I had spent 4 months, putting together a new plan, new positioning, planning a new website, like just getting the organization where we knew it needed to be in order to meet our vision. And we landed this, our biggest client to date, and started with them in February. And it was just this turning point. And it felt like everything that we had been doing for the past 6 months that was so hard, that was just hard. It was sticky and icky, and all the things just felt difficult. It was a heavy lift. And something just happened that month. Like everything just turned around. And we were like, started to feel like, okay, all right, we might be on to something here. And we've grown like our annual revenue, like over 600% since then. We've hired, maybe 4 or 5 new team members. Just so much has changed. And we are, I think, really on the path to meeting our 3-year vision. Another EOS thing. So we're really on the path to, I think, meeting that. And we've even realized some of the things in our 3-year vision that we like realized within 6 months as opposed to 3 years. So it's just, you believe in the process. I don't even remember how we got down this rabbit hole, but that's sort of our journey as an organization and the leadership team. And making sure the right people are in the right seats was a huge part of that. And I can say has, just changed the organization.
And I was gonna say that I've seen exactly that happen, and I didn't know what was not working until I read that in Traction, the book. I was like, yes, and right away I wrote down the names of the team members. I'm like, that person is much better in that person, and then I looked at the core values, and everything started aligning, and it was like that aha moment. And I feel like, but here's my, I would call it like a hot take.
Okay.
There is a certain point where EOS starts to make sense, but if you're too small, it doesn't make sense. You're literally talking to yourself about these meetings.
Yeah, that is absolutely fair. I could totally see that.
And in that context, what I wanted to say was when you did your agency, knowing the stuff that you know now, do you feel like you could have implemented some of those things? Or
Oh my gosh. Oh, if I knew what I knew now. Okay. This is a really interesting question. I've thought about this a lot and nobody's ever asked me about this, so it's actually kind of interesting. When I look back at my agency and what I was doing for 6 years, I like to call it fast and loose, baby. Like it was fast and loose. Like, I mean, we were doing really well. Like we were really like, obviously I sold it. I had something of value, but it was fast and loose. Like, we had no processes. Like, we didn't have organization. Like, we were just creatives and like coming together and like with a common goal. And you know what? We did some really great work, and I'm really proud of what we were able to achieve in 6 years. But when I look at like what we're doing now at Marr, I mean, I'm embarrassed. Like, I can't even tell you the world of difference that all of these things make. Like, it's so important to, even if you don't fit, and it could be something else, doesn't have to be EOS, but
Yeah.
even if you're like, oh, we're not big enough for this right now, it's the mentality and it's the approach and it's the accountability and the, systematizing, like just all of these things that are like really the core components of EOS. And you can call it whatever you want. You can do it in a number of different ways. EOS is just a framework to live by. And obviously we've drank the Kool-Aid, like we're super into it. But if I look back, I'm like, holy smokes. I mean, I didn't even know what was going on, but we were just doing work and sending out invoices and, things were getting done. But if I would have known these things and had the experience in it, I mean, we could have been massive. Like, we were successful with nothing, with no resources, with no structure, without any of it. And if I think about like what we could have been with this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to know what I could have sold it for if I was actually had my shit together, So, I'm whatever. I'm proud of it either way. It's all a learning. I started the company when I was like 25 years old. So what do you know? Like, I thought I was doing pretty good at the time, right? So, now I'm much older, I'm much wiser. I've had a lot more experience. And even if I think about what I was selling and like what I was charging, I'm like, holy smokes, just a world of difference, basically. But I think we probably all have those moments as entrepreneurs, leaders, just professional people looking back and being like, what was I up to? But hey, if we didn't do it, if we didn't go through it, we wouldn't be where we are. So if I didn't do that, I never would be here doing this in this way. And now, the only other thing I'll say about that is you have to have the right leadership team. I didn't really have that with my agency with Shout. I was trying to lead on my own. And now with our leadership team, I mean, there's only 3 of us, and it is the most effective, 3-person leadership team, I swear. We all work incredibly well together. We're all 100% bought in. We just give a shit, and that goes a long way. And so I feel like we can do anything that we want to put our minds to. And having Tessa and Ali on the leadership team with me, there's no way that I would achieve this without them, or that they would achieve it without me, or like, you got to come together with other people who believe in it and want to see it through, and will do what it takes. And I think that's what we have now, and I think that that's really cool, and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, and it's definitely like a team effort when it comes to leadership, and that's also part of the EOS. Like, and mistakes that I made in the past was I thought that you need to find people that are similar to you and kind of build, but actually you were doubling on your flaws, and I learned that really fast.
Yeah.
Really, I was like, oh my God, this is not working. Fantastic person, we can be buddies, but we can't work. This work is not working out at all. And another thing that was thrown in my mix, and it sounds like it was the same with you, was kids running a business and having little kids. My son, he graduated today, so from kindergarten he's gonna go to from daycare. He's go to kindergarten,
Same
and
with my daughter. So our kids are the same age, so we just had that as well.
awesome. And my daughter, she's going to grade 1, so she graduated from kindergarten. And when I was starting this, they were really small, and the focus was like, not because of it was because of sleep deprivation, basically, because they're so small.
That's fair. Me too. I mean, yeah, it makes a huge difference.
I was gonna say, how do you feel about the achievements that you were able to do with having kids and running a business, do you feel like that is something that uh, is something people don't think when they're starting a business or when they are running? They kind of like, no, this is fantastic, gonna work out, without understanding. Look, you have to have time for your family. Like, you're doing this
Yeah.
because you always say, I want to have time for my kids. You do have the time. You just choose to send those invoices and
Yeah.
to sit in front of the desk.
Yeah.
How did you work through that balance?
Oh, actually, when I think about it now, like it gives me like a hot flush. Like I'm like, oh my God, I'm just like, I have, this response to thinking back to that time because I was 25 when I started the business. I got pregnant with my daughter when I was 26. No, I had her when I was 24 when I started the business. My goodness. I was 24 when I started the business. I just kind of started getting into the flow of things, and then we got pregnant with my daughter. And we hadn't even been back in Canada for that long. It was like just a whole host of things going on, right? And I just think, like, what on earth? Like, how did I even survive it? Because I went from having, a corporate job and a salary and like maternity leave to having a company which was not established, which I certainly did not have a salary from. Also, no mat leave, of course, being self-employed. Here we don't have any mat leave. I didn't pay into anything. I don't get anything. So I had a baby when I was 26. I literally had her and was like back at work like the next week, with a baby like on my lap. I mean, I'm not unique in this. This is a common story of entrepreneurial women, no matter where you look in the world. And I just thought, actually, when I was pregnant, I approached another agency and was like, wanted to sell them my client list. And at that time, I didn't have much to sell, but I didn't know what I was asking for. I was just like, does anybody want this? Like, I'm having a baby. I don't know what's going on here. And now they made me an offer. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? Like, I can do this. I mean, a little bit delirious for sure, like delusional, delirious, whatever. And evidently I ended up having a baby and continuing to run my company. And it was absolutely crazy. Also, when she was about a year old is when the company really took off. It was COVID, and, all of a sudden we were just hot in demand, right?
Yeah.
And there was just this exponential growth happening during that time. And I sort of had just enough time between, okay, she was a year old, she's at daycare full time, and I'm like, okay. And then I worked on the business for like a year and a half, and then got pregnant with my son. And then I'm like, oh, here we go again. And then, had my son, and then they did it all over again, right? And it was after I had my son that I was like, okay, this is not actually working for me. This is not actually reasonable. I didn't mention to you that during this time, we also started a business for my husband. So, here I am. So I was like 28 years old, pregnant with, I've got a toddler, I'm pregnant with my second. I'm running my company. I just launched a company for my husband because he got laid off at the beginning of COVID. So what does a marketer do? Takes their husband's skills and creates a business for them. And I was just thinking, after I had my son, my priorities just changed. They just
Yeah.
changed. It was interesting because with one, I was like, okay, you can kind of patch things together.
Right.
It's not ideal, but it is what it is. And everything is kind of rolling. So it's okay. And then you have the second one and you're like, no, like this is totally crazy. Like I'm stressed out 24/7. I'm like trying to breastfeed a baby and take a client call the day after he was born. I was literally putting out a fire with a client. I'm like, this is not sustainable. Nobody should be doing this. And another perspective is I felt kind of robbed of, that time when like my kids were like little, they were babies. And I was focused on growing a business, like running a business instead of enjoying that time with them. And I have so much regret about that. Like there is like you can't replace that. You
Yeah.
can start and grow a business at any time in your life. And I deeply regret prioritizing that during that time. And evidently I ended up being like, okay, well, screw this. I don't want to do it anymore. And so I did sell it, but I wish I did it sooner. Like I actually just wish I did it sooner.
Yeah.
And I thought about it and I had conversations, and it was more of like a pride thing. Like I didn't want people to think that I quit
Hmm.
or that I couldn't do it because I was a mom. And it was more about like proving a point than it was like that I actually wanted to do this. And yeah, I regret not making that decision earlier. And I think like looking back on it, I'm proud of what I was able to do and what I was able to accomplish, but I'm probably more regretful than I am proud. You know what I'm saying? Like I now that my kids are 2 and 3, or sorry, 2 and 5, 2 and 3, 2 and 5. I just am like, it's over.
Yeah.
It's gone. Can't
Yeah.
can't have it back. Not having any more kids. So I can't handle that. So, it's like it sucks. But I just like if anybody's thinking about starting a business or growing a business or anything, if you can choose a time, which usually you can't, usually these things just happen. But I would just like my biggest advice to people would just be like prioritize that time and don't spend it stressed out about um a business if you can help it. I'm not,
Yeah.
again, this is like best case scenario, right? I
Yeah.
mean, but I just think like, yeah, you can't replace that time. And I wish I had it in a lot of ways. I wish I had it back. So
There is, I think we not knowing is where that regrets come, because I have the same feeling. My daughter was very small. My son was really like, I missed out on so many things because the way that I looked at it eventually changed. The way that I looked at it was like, I'm doing this. I know why I'm doing this. I'm doing this for a future. I can't see it today. They're very, very young. Probably they
yeah.
will not remember some of these things. So that was my excuse. And I used it as an excuse because I don't know if it was the right thing to do. I don't know if it's the wrong thing that I did, but I used it as the excuse that, look, they're like, she's one. Okay, like I know what I feel, but she will not remember. Now, years pass by and it looks like you prioritize things the right way. And
Mhm.
till today, I still work with clients that use the business as an excuse. Like I'm
Mhm.
like, you don't have to stay these long hours. You don't have to take the call with me at 6 p.m. Like,
No.
why are you doing
Yeah.
these things that you don't? And I see people still kind of hide. And I would say that's how I feel about it. Like they would hide behind the business because I started with time. Once my daughter was 4, I was like, okay, now she does remember. Daddy, did you come here? Daddy, did you see me?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, she does remember. And this is when I started to dramatically change. And when my son started going like simple things like soccer class, he started remembering, like, did you watch me last time? I was like, okay,
Yeah.
5 p.m. straight cutoff time. I can't do it
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, there is nothing that important that can wait six
No.
hours. It will
No,
be okay.
well, that's the thing that like we're not saving people's lives here.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not.
No.
So, there really is nothing that important. And so we joke about that all the time on our team. It's like, yeah, we're not like saving lives. So there is no reason why we can't have boundaries as an organization, why we can't have boundaries as individuals. One of our values is work freely. So we believe in obviously like our people designing a schedule that works for them and their family. And that's critical, I think, to like people's feeling of satisfaction in their job, their productivity. We don't want to micromanage your schedule. Like we have obviously certain expectations,
Yeah.
but in terms of, hey, if you want to go and like live in Mexico for 4 months and work from Mexico, like our CEO does that every year. So, I mean, we're all about it. You have to be able to prioritize like your family. And I think that like, we place such a significance on that as an organization, that our people feel it and they like that makes a big difference to them. I know it makes a big difference to me. So yeah, I mean, like my daughter's, you mentioned preschool graduation. I had the same thing last week. I leave work in the middle of the day, go to the graduation, and her dad left work too. And he was kind of humming and hawing, and it was like, what's more important? Like, you're still going to get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah, like
So
this is what you'll remember forever. Not like, remember that call I took in 2024?
yeah.
Like, no, you're not gonna
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. It's like, remember how I finished that job 2 hours earlier than, I could have because I didn't go to the graduation? Like nobody cares, right?
That's
So, and, much like yourself, our daughter is, at the age where she is very impressionable. She does notice everything. She cares about everything. And it's very humbling as a parent when they get to that age and you're like, okay, yeah, I can't get away with things now. It's like they're watching everything and they're listening to everything. And yeah, it's just that's to me like that's what's most important. And I really enjoy what I do. Like I love my job. I love my team so much. But at the end of the day, I'm doing this so that I can, pay for this home that we live in
right.
and, our 2 vacations a year and all of these things. I'm doing it for my family, right? It's not just because of out of a pure love for it. And this is all that matters,
Yeah,
So that's my definition of success.
there is there is the kind of balance, but also there is the I always wanted to do this to have the freedom to spend more time with my family, and then all of a sudden it's there, and you're choosing the right things, spending the time. Yes, it's boring to sit there and look at little kids kick a ball a little bit. Yes, it's not fantastic, but they will remember. And
Yeah,
those things, at least with time, I was like, this is what matters, man. Like, don't look at the invoices, don't look at the balance. You're working towards the future. It will happen because you honestly work towards it. These are the things that take it as a parent, enjoy them, because you will look on your phone, you will look at these pictures, and you will remember that
absolutely.
versus, that client left that day, man, big dent in my Q3. Like,
You
that,
won't remember it. Like, and honestly speaking from experience, both my parents worked a lot through have done through my whole life, and their priority was work and themselves. And they never came to any of my sporting events, and they were never involved in any of my schooling or anything like that. And yeah, I think that that impacted our relationship. And like, I'm not one of these people who's like, I've got all this trauma. Like, that's just not me. But, I like that makes a big difference.
it would have
I
been
remember
nice.
that. Like
Yeah.
I remember that, right? And as a parent, I'm like, I do not want to make my children feel like work is more important than them. And actually, I asked my daughter this because I saw it on social media or something, and I was like, oh, maybe I should ask like Renee like what she thinks is like the most important thing to me. And I asked her and she was like, work. And I'm like, okay, I'm really like, I thought I was doing not too bad, and I'm like, okay, I have missed the mark. I'm still missing the mark and I'm aware of it. So, as you can imagine, I actually wrote a post about this on LinkedIn because I was like beside myself. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? That was a good check-in for me. Like, obviously, something that I'm doing is communicating to like my family that work is more important to them. And like, it couldn't be further from the truth. And I don't want them to feel that way whatsoever. So it's good to have those check-ins and that like those aha moments where you're like, okay, I need to check myself here and maybe make some adjustments and have a bit of a reminder.
Yeah. And it's, uh, kids are innocent. They don't think. They just say it, and like, and then you kind of reminisce, like, oh, I see,
Yes,
I see what has
right.
happened here.
Yes.
And I think it's something interesting that you mentioned about your organization of creating your schedule. Do you feel like those core values that you've set, is that part of being able to foster a kind of people that are very creative and innovativeness within the company?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our industry is like, you can't, well, I don't think so. I don't think it's the right way to do it to chain somebody to a desk from 9 to 5. Like creative inspiration for content and yeah, being innovative and coming up with creative concepts and things like that. I mean, sometimes I know for me, it's like usually when I'm like driving or, I don't know, like these things just come to me like randomly where I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think that like your traditional corporate structure really has a place with like our industry. I don't think that it's not necessary either. So, what is necessary is making ourselves available for client meetings and client communications. And so that's where we sort of come in and say, we would expect a response to our clients within, 24 hours, in business on a business day, not on the weekends, but, and so, if you can adhere to these things, then I don't really care if you work at 11 o'clock at night. Like if you want to come to our Wednesday morning huddle and then take the rest of the day off and work from 8 p.m. to 12 midnight, like what do I care? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If that's when you do your best work. Some of our team works early in the morning and then some of us have kids. And so we're very like regimented in terms of when we're available. So, I mean, I adhere to a pretty traditional schedule myself. I'm at my desk by 9 o'clock and I'm here till 4:30. But I also have the benefit of like a lot of our clients are in the Eastern Standard Time Zone and I'm in the Pacific Standard Time Zone. So like I kind of get lots of my stuff done in the mornings and then often I can pick my kids up early so it's like, whatever works for you. Like I think like that you have to have that for that creativity and that innovation and just staying on top of things in an industry like ours, which is hard to keep up with.
When you're looking at trying to keep up in your industry, and it's a very competitive industry, and I feel like it's dramatically changing recently with AI, and that's something that I've asked almost everyone, and I wanted to get your view on the whole AI thing that is happening. How do you see it? What is it changing right now for you guys internally?
So there's two Natashas when it comes to AI, okay? There's like personal Natasha and then there's professional Natasha. Personal Natasha is super old school and I want nothing to do with it. I don't care about it. And I'm just old school. Like I want to write things myself and want to have like my just own way of doing things. And so that's just the way that I am. I think I also wrote a LinkedIn post about this. And then there's professional Natasha, which understands that, this is a part of our job, is like keeping up to date with how things like AI are impacting our industry, the tools that we use. Obviously it's made a significant impact to, some of the editing tools that we use or like influencer marketing databases and things like that. It's great for, taking data and like discerning it, like understanding like what does this mean? So all of these ways that we can use it in our industry. What I am hardcore against is using AI for like creative execution. So I keep getting delivered this ad on Facebook and it's like this AI generated image for like this construction company. I'm like, this literally makes me never want to do business with you ever. Like I will actively avoid doing business with you. Like you can't even take a picture of your project, like what? So and like say for writing as well. I'm okay with like creative ideation. Maybe if you need a boost to like, maybe we need some ideas of like what to talk about. Okay, fine. But like, then when you talk about it, just talk about it. Like just be a human and talk about it. I don't really understand. I think that we're so obsessed with this society as with coming up with like efficiencies and like slashing our time everywhere. And that's just like, how can we figure out how to fit like 100 things into our day? And like, now that we have AI, it can do all of these things for us. And it's like, I don't know, but stay away from it from the creative perspective. Again, when it comes to organization, analyzing data, like all sorts of different things that it is incredibly impactful for, and I'm all about it. But as an agency, we have like a hard rule. We don't use it to copyright, and we don't use it for like creative pieces. Like, we all of our creative is done by a real person, and I think it's sad, but like that's like a point of differentiation for us now. But it is. It's like, no, it's just real people back here doing this work for you. The same when we engage on our client accounts. It's just us, like ourselves, engaging on your account, adhering to your tone of voice. We don't use any bots. We don't use any automations. We just do it ourselves. And that does make an impact to the platform. And so that's sort of my take on it. As you can tell, I'm maybe a little bit, I don't know if bias is the right word because I don't know where the bias really comes from other than I'm just like a little bit more of a traditional person.
And I was going to ask, is it because of, because for example, I don't use it in sales. I don't use it in my creative, in my copy that I use for LinkedIn outreach. I tried it. I've even said like, hey, this is how I write it. Read 50 of my Google Docs. Here are some value props, and it shoots out so much fluff, and sales is not fluff. And I'm like, man, I'm trying. Why am I even doing this? Because I can sit there and I can look at my client and I can see what their value proposition is. I can write it properly for their target audience, and I'm done. And this is going to work. And I've seen it that it works. And then I do get the AI messages. And I do also, when I'm hiring, I see people really long answers to everything. I'm like, you do know that we will talk, right? You don't talk like
Yeah.
this. You're not setting yourself for success. Um,
Yeah.
my question was, do you have this opinion and feelings because you see your results done by a person and done by AI on content creation and scheduling and publishing and results? Do you see like there is definitely like a difference?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. You can't, at this point in time, I'm not saying it will never be the case, but at this point in time, I don't think that you can fully replace a creative person with AI yet. I'm sure that will probably happen, and like that's a whole nother problem. Um, but right now, that human element still is meaningful, and still makes a difference. And I think, like in my mind, I just don't want to be replacing everybody with robots, and AI. So maybe that's just like my personal opinion coming through in that sense. I think technology is fantastic, but once we start aggressively, replacing people with AI, then like what do we need people for? AI doesn't need us anymore, so though it'll find some way to, outsmart us and in our own world, and we'll be obsolete. So I mean, I think that there's a lot of ethical considerations to AI that need to be made. And I think that right now in my industry, having people doing the work is still valuable.
And you are on the creative side, and the creative side has spoken many times when they're like, how are you training these models? Like, you're taking something that I made with no consent. Oh, I had to click accept on a 1,000 page, whatever. So the creative side is coming from people, and you aren't just training and training and training. But it's, if that kind of stops, it's not there yet. You're saying like it's not even, probably not in the near future, that it can come up with its own creative original ideas. It feeds off older stuff, tweaks, changes, modifies. Hands look awful, we know that.
Yeah.
But it can only help you in analyzing and not starting from a blank page.
Yeah.
And then the rest, it has to be taken by a person, because the difference in results is dramatically noticeable. Now, you have big brands that work with you guys. Do
Mhm.
you see that they've tried and they're like, hey, Natasha, let's give this a little an A/B test?
Yeah, no, I mean, actually, most of them I probably have the same, I feel are in alignment with sort of my perspective. Um, the other thing too is like, I mean, sometimes clients will ask us, oh, like, how do you use AI for that? And I'll be like, no, we don't. And actually, it's kind of a part of my sales process now where I'm like, just so you know, this is like real people doing this. They live in Canada. Our team is from West to East Coast. This is basically how we operate, because it is a point of differentiation. And yeah, I mean, I think most people are like reasonable when it comes to AI, and understanding that, there are obviously some clear benefits. There are some clear like areas that we don't really want to go with it. But evidently, I think, we don't really have control over these things, and I'm not super excited to find out where it goes. Um, but yeah, that's just like my old school mentality.
And it's I think it's interesting that now we're saying that's the old school mentality, preferring people to
I
do the
know,
work. It's shocking.
I know, right? And
But
also, I guess big people are always like, oh, is it, are you worried that, well, my husband says this because he's like obsessed with this kind of stuff. And he's like, oh, well, your industry is going to be completely obsolete. Like, it's only a matter of time. And I'm like, okay, well, like maybe you're not wrong, but I'm like, how long till AI replaces salespeople though? Because like, I feel like people like to buy from people, right?
yeah,
People like people. So if I'm like, if I can't hold on to the marketing side of it, I'll hold on to the sales as long as I can.
yeah, and there was that's interesting, because there was one client who was like, hey man, check this out. This is this AI voice thing that it can do the sales call and understand the questions. And then he gives me a week later a sample of how it went bad. And it's so easy to go bad at this stage, because the guy was like, hey, the AI says a bunch of stuff, ask some questions, and the person on the other side is like, hey, are you a robot? Are you a bot? And it's like, no, I'm not. And then he's like, all right, what is 3 million divided by 564? And it gives a straight answer. So he's like, okay, bye. Because
Yeah,
there's no,
exactly. Yeah.
and he's like, still lost. So there is in sales, I still don't think it's nowhere near there. But for some stuff, analyzing the data, not starting from a blank page, it might be helpful. On the creative side, I still think that on the creative side is not close to where it can change or substitute a whole person. I think there's a lot of hype around it, right? Because it sounds really cool, buzzwords. It sounds cool, but we're kind of on the same page that it's funny that it's old school not to think people like to work with people. When you look at your sales approach, because we talk people like to talk with people. What are your fundamentals when it comes to sales? Because you've been doing sales in so many industries for so many years. What are your fundamentals in sales?
Yeah, it feels like a long career so far, and I'm not even touching the sides of being half done. You know what? Like, I just think sales is about listening. I'm not like, I'm just not in the business of selling people things they don't need. Like, that's just kind of always the way that I have approached it. I'm really just, I have a solution to a particular set of problems or needs for a, identified group of people. And if they come into my purview and they, could benefit from what we do, then we have a conversation. And at the end of the day, I don't think that I don't really believe in like the pushy mentality. I think like for me, it's just conversations and listening, just listening to why are we here? Why are we having this conversation? What's been happening? Tell me, tell me a little bit about how social media has been handled, or like what sort of keeps you up at night when you think of social media for your brand, or there's just there's a number of things that I'll ask and just try to get a sense of like what's going on. And, sometimes we're really not a good fit, and so then in those cases, I'm like, I already know that actually signing a client like this is going to actually prevent us from meeting our vision. So I'm not all about just making a sale. And I think that also just comes with experience and confidence of knowing like we have something good to offer. I know that we do. And we don't have to work with every single brand that sort of comes to my inbox. And so that's also allows me to just be, confident and sure in what we're doing, and just know that I don't have to be pushy. Like the right clients will come. And I honestly strongly believe like if you do the right thing by people and you do the right thing in business, you will be successful. There is no way not to be. And that's just something that I believe in, like my personal life, that I've carried through to business. Somebody told me that at some time. It was like one of my first clients, I think, that I was talking to, and she sort of became like a mentor for me. I was so young. I was like 24. And I think she said that to me. It was like, if you just do the right thing by people in business, like you can't fail. You just can't, because sometimes things don't work out, and sometimes it's not the right time, from a sales perspective or financial or what have you. But, sometimes things pop back up into my inbox these days, and I'm like, I never thought I was going to talk to this person again, but I left a good impression on them apparently, and now the time's right. And they're like, hey, Natasha, like, do you have got time next week to chat? And I'm like, sure. I'm just over here like trying to provide as much value as possible, whether it's through like my LinkedIn post that I did, an email that I put out, a conversation that I had. Like, that is what it's really all about, is just kind of going out there and like sharing your knowledge and being a good person and like doing the right thing. And I think that that's kind of my philosophy when it comes to business and sales. And I mean, so far that's paid off. So fingers crossed. Like, I think that if you put good out there, good will come back to you.
Yeah. And doing the right thing in sales is the right thing to do. And that's the philosophy right there.
Yeah.
Natasha, if someone wants to get a hold of you and kind of work with you, how did they do that?
Yeah, so you can reach us at on Instagram at Marr Media, so MARR Media Group, and also at marmedia.com. And you can contact us right through either of those platforms. And we offer, I walk through a lot of social opportunities audits with brands out there who want just a little bit of an idea as to sort of, where they can make improvements and things like that. And so you can request that right on our website or through our Instagram.
Appreciate the time, Natasha. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and always lovely talking to you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Zivko.